It's a pleasure to be here, and really a pleasure for me to really address the all of you as part of this wonderful seminar. I kind of listened to Mr. Kurian's session earlier, and I think it was a fabulous introduction about the kind of changes that are there that we should all be ready for. And I think that really sets the stage for us to really think about what are the changes, and how should we as HR people be ready for that. I think the last year or two has been landmark. It has changed many assumptions. It has changed many business models. It has kind of, opened out a lot of new thinking for many people. And all organizations are now saying, how do I change? And many have started thinking about their own roadmaps for change. Some are becoming more digital. Some are working for a new hybrid way of working. Some are saying, listen, I want to really invest in newer technologies. Some are like some from your industry are saying, I'm going to invest a lot more in online sales. So, this has led to a lot of changes. But at the heart of all of these changes is people. Yeah, because and if you want to make any of these changes successful, it's got to be people. And therefore, HR really plays a significant role now in every organization as organizations try and look to transform. And I think it's very important because as we look, the theme of the seminar is all about innovate, transform, and optimize. Yeah, and I think that's at the heart of what we in HR need to do. Every organization is looking at their business transformation. Every organization is changing how they want to really be agile in light of the newer opportunities. And who needs to lead? HR needs to lead. Yeah, I think all of us in HR have to lead and say, okay, how do we really help our organizations transform to the future? Now, so therefore, the three key things. I think the kind of the theme is phenomenal. You've got to innovate, you got to transform, and some areas also optimize. Yeah, I think these are three key things. But what I'll do now is look at just 5 areas where I think as HR people, we got to keep a greater focus, where to innovate, where to transform, and where to optimize. And there are these 5 areas. I think the first one that we all have to do is really look at the workforce of tomorrow. Who are our employees of tomorrow? And that's where we got to think, a little more. What are the new types of skill we need? Because the skills are changing. What you had in the past may not be successful. So start thinking about what is a future employee. Maybe the person needs to be adept, much more digital, be much more digitally savvy. Maybe the person needs to be very good in digital marketing. Maybe the person should. So therefore, you got to understand what are those. What defines the future employee for you, and start working on that. We're also going to be working in a way of a hybrid environment. Yeah, and this hybrid opens up newer things. Maybe some functions you may not need people to come to office. Maybe they can be sitting somewhere else and working. So that opens up your talent pool to many more things. Therefore, you can look at diversity. You can look at people from different backgrounds. So it opens up a lot of opportunities for us to think of what kind of alternate talent we can look at. It may also open up opportunities for, let's say, gig people. I wouldn't call them gig workers, but gig employees, because they could be people who got great expertise, but sitting somewhere else who can work for you for some time. So these are new ideas that we all have to think and innovate and see how we want to really look at it. The other thing is look at the type of skills that you need. Maybe lots more digital skills. In organizations like us, like IT organizations, I think with growing digitization, we've got to get people who are good at those skills, who can good at helping digital transformation. Similarly, each of you have to think of what are those new skills for the future. Yeah. So I think the first key area for us as HR to look at is to define your workforce of tomorrow. But define it in the context of the hybrid world. Define it in the context of some jobs that can work from anywhere. Define it in the context of the new skills that you may need. Define it in the context of the new business model that your industry or your organization may be going through. And as you look at all of these, find new opportunities and innovate and build the talent for tomorrow. Yeah, so that's the first step. I think the second one is clearly what we now call as employee experience. Yeah. And this employee experience is actually, there are 2 parts to it. In the past, I think the employee experience was a lot about what we did face to face. Yeah, we had engagement occasions in the in your case in your shops, in your offices, warehouses, factories, etc. But I think that's now changing. The employee experience is now split into two parts. There is a digital experience, and there is a employee experience in a very much hybrid world. So how do you really think about it very differently? Yeah, that's the other one we got to do. For the digital experience, we got to invest in tools that will help provide the right digital experience to people. Yeah, helping them to work in a remote world. But even otherwise, when people are coming to work, how do our managers engage with them? How do I work with people in somewhat of a hybrid way? So rethink your employee experience, because that's going to be very critical now, because what are the various touch points of your employees? How will they access services? How will they connect with each other? How will managers connect with them? You got to really think about it, because that's another great way to really look at changes there. How HR also works is very important. I think we got to think of differently how HR can use more technology, yet at the same time ensure that you're connecting with people a lot more. Yeah, so that's the second part that we got to look at to innovate. The third key area is well-being. Yeah, I heard one of the sessions that Lawrence mentioned later today is all about mental health. Why is that? Because well-being is becoming very important. And in a hybrid world where some of you will be physically working, some of you will not, there are two different challenges. Wellness in a well-being in a physical world where you got to ensure that there's proper vaccination, proper sanitization, and other controls. But similarly, for people working alone, this lack of connection. Sometimes because of working alone, they tend to work longer hours. How do you manage that? But I think people miss that connection, and people may feel excluded if they are partly remote and partly working in a physical thing. So therefore, this whole well-being, we've got to look at it very differently, and we got to, each of us have to really have a program of well-being that we've got to build, which really takes into account many things. Takes into account emotional wellness of people, their connections and social wellness, their physical wellness, all of that. And I think that's an important one that all of us have to really transform from HR. The next big area, my fourth key change that we got to look at, is what I call as, who are the new leaders for tomorrow? Who will be successful in this new world? Mr. Kurian mentioned about it, right? There are lots of changes happening. But if I look at three key things that are very important for the future, number one, we need leaders who have to be more empathetic now. Yeah, they've got to connect with more people, because you're going to have a lot more diverse type of people, and you're going to have people who are going to be partly hybrid. You're not going to see them every day, but you got to connect with them, build that relationship, and therefore you need managers and leaders to be more empathetic, more putting yourself in the shoes of the others and listening. Yeah, so I think that's going to be very important for our future leaders. I think it's about the better leaders. What we've also found with research is that in a hybrid kind of an environment, leaders who help people get things done, who kind of who are always there to support their people, who listen to them, who solve their problems, are much more successful than leaders with charisma and those kind of things. So therefore, it's very important you look at your future leaders of tomorrow. The second thing about leaders is that we need leaders who are going to be agile learners. The leaders have to really be people who are not fixed in their mindset, who are able to learn fast, who are able to come change quickly. Those are the kind of leaders you've got to develop. And the last thing about leaders is really people who are also quite strategic in their thinking, who are able to spot patterns of change. If you look at ways that people, as you start in organizations, you need people who are much more analytical. Yeah. But as you grow up, you need people who are able to look at things more strategically, who can, shape patterns. That's what you need. You need leaders who can connect different things, understand and find patterns, and see what's happening before, others get a clue. So therefore, you need those kind of leaders. So I think these are the three key things. I think we need to see changes in the type of leaders we need for the future. Leaders who are more empathetic, leaders who are agile learners, and leaders who can see, connect the dot and see patterns. Yeah. And I think we've got to start developing that. And leaders doesn't mean really at the top, but leaders at all levels. And I think we've got to HR has to lead in saying, how do I start identifying and developing these kind of leaders for the future? I think the last of my 5 changes for HR is on culture. Uh, and I think culture is going to be a big change because there are many things that are changing. In many of the organizations, the business model, or the focus of the business is changing. Yeah, you're becoming more digital. You're becoming, looking at different ways of reaching your customers. So that's number one. Number two, your workforce is changing. You're having much more diverse workforce. You're having also workforce which are going to be probably hybrid in some cases. You're going to have workforce from different generations, yeah, and especially in retail, you see that in a very big way. You got people who just in their 20s to people who are much older. So therefore, you got a huge spread of generational diversity. So when all these are changing, I think, and with your business models changing, your workforce changing, the diversity of the team changing, I think we also have to change the culture. And that culture starts with everything, not only your leaders, but your other HR systems. Start with leaders first, but also look at how are you rewarding people? How are you recognizing people? How are you training people? Because you need a culture which is right for you, a culture which is much more inclusive, a culture of learning, because you need people to learn continuously. You need people to be much more inclusive because you're going to have very diverse teams working in a hybrid way. How do you feel them all included? And that's where culture really is going to be important. And you also need a culture which is open to change, to embrace newer ways, newer digital ways of working. Yeah. So therefore, I think HR then has to play a big part in building this culture, articulating what you need, starting with the leaders and they being the kind of torchbearers of culture and, helping them talk about it and, set the pathway for it, but also supporting it with various things like the right recognition, rewards, etc. So those are some of the things we need to work on. So in summary, let me kind of stop here. I think with so much change happening, and the theme of the session is phenomenal. It's all about innovating, transforming, and optimizing. But I just wanted to talk about 5 areas that I had mentioned. The workforce of tomorrow. What do you want to do there? I've told you about some of the changes, but that's where we need you to innovate and transform that. Right? The future focus on well-being. How will that be? And how will you really make that a core proposition for each of your employees? Employee experience. How is it being redefined? How do you want to redefine it for your organizations? What are the digital elements that you want to build? But what are the other elements that you want to strengthen in a more of a hybrid way? That's the important part. And what role do leaders and managers play in this new employee experience? The new leaders of tomorrow. Yeah. How do you define them? How do you develop them? And I've told you the 3 things that I think are going to be very important for the new leaders. And lastly, your culture. Because at the end, these are some changes that need a change in mindset, change in culture. And with so much happening, unless the culture changes, we'll not be able to substantially build on the future change. Yeah? So start working on those elements for your change. So I'll stop here. Wish you all a fantastic kind of the next 2 days. I've heard about these wonderful sessions that have been lined up for you. I think they're all really the right sessions to help you, build and get some new ideas. I think these workshops are to give you these new ideas so you can think about it and start seeing what you can do with it. Thank you and all the best. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.